Hey folks, while I'm waiting for new stock, as per the last video, I moved recently and sold down my stock, and now I'm sort of rebuilding, which means there's very little to review at the moment, at least stuff that you haven't seen already on this channel. So maybe this week I'll do a few videos on other music related issues, which some people enjoy. At least I'm told in the comments to do more of them by some people. Although I know a lot of you tune in for reflections on specific guitars and stuff. So to those people I apologize. Bear with me. I think I have an interesting topic today, and I think perhaps you can all weigh in the comments and give me your take on it. One thing that's always annoyed me about guys my age, and I'm a Gen Xer, and guys from the generation above me, the boomers, is that they're fond of the saying, you know, music today is crap, music sucks, music is terrible. It's not like our generation. You know, music used to be great, now it's no good anymore. You've heard people say this. It's a common sentiment. We hear it a lot. I see it on social media a lot. I see a lot of memes about bands today not being, you know, up to par with, you know, the Beatles and Stones and Zeppelin of yesteryear. And this week I just happened to catch Rick Beato's video. I don't usually watch his stuff. Every once in a while I catch one of his. This one was also with a similar title, Why Music Today Sucks, or something like that, compared to, you know, past generations. And while he has some valid points in the video, and he backs up his opinions with a lot of music theory knowledge, and I can tell he's schooled. I took music theory in college. I also took music theory exams at the Royal Academy of Music in London. Played in an orchestra, was classically trained on the cello, so I have a pretty good theoretical background, and on some of his points I agree that modern music lacks variation and diversity. It tends to pander towards, you know, simplistic tastes and all that. But where I think his argument breaks down is that what he has represent contemporary or music today in his video, and a lot of people do this, is just the schlock on the radio. For instance, when he's talking about the 60s, he lets the Beatles represent the 60s. When he's talking about the 70s, he references bands like Led Zeppelin. When he talks about the 80s, I can't remember the specific reference, but you know, underground bands that were particularly adventurous during that period. 90s, I think he references Soundgarden and Radiohead as being representative. But when he talks about current music, he just talks about what's on the radio. Now, first of all, the radio isn't what it used to be. Music is no longer an international or national consciousness. What do I mean by that? Well, when I was 18, I always knew what was number one in the charts. I always knew the up-and-coming bands in the charts. You know, I would watch shows like Top of the Pops in Britain. We had more of a national and international consciousness of what was happening in the music scene, both the popular, the new, the different, the up-and-coming. That's all gone. There's no longer any of that anymore. You probably don't know what's number one right now. I don't. Probably couldn't name hardly any acts in the top 10 or top 40. That consciousness is gone. Secondly, radio has been taken over by Clear Channel. Imagine if Sgt. Pepper came out today. Would it be on the radio? I don't think so. Imagine if Zeppelin 4 came out today. Would it make the radio? Probably not. The radio, particularly pirate radio and college radio, used to be fairly representative of all the music possible that you could purchase back in those times. It's no longer that way. It's owned by corporations. They construct playlists from 10 bands and maybe 2 songs from each of those bands. It's a very narrow, populist approach to music. And this is why most of your friends, if you're my age or older, listen to the same 10 bands that they grew up with, the same 20 albums that they've been listening to for 30, 40 years, why they don't seek out new music. Well, radio doesn't really encourage you to. Mainstream channels don't really encourage you to unless something gets really, really popular. Music is being compartmentalized, even ghettoized. If you want good music, you have to go and seek it out. It will not be served to you. But to say there is no good music today, and all music today should be reflected by Bruno Mars or whatever's in the charts, I think is disingenuous and unfair and ignorant in a way. For the last 10 years, I've been a guest radio presenter for a British radio show. So I would research every month all the music coming out, and I couldn't keep up. I could not keep up. And not just music, good music, great music, interesting, experimental, progressive, musically challenging, genre bending. There's all kinds of stuff coming out at all times. Now that music is being digitized, there's a tendency to think, well, the talent pool has been diluted. And that digitization of music means anyone can put out an album, which means most albums are crap. And while there is a plethora of, let's say, bad music, although we all know it's subjective, comes out because the means of production has been opened up to everyone. You don't need a major label anymore. All you need is a computer, a bedroom, a bit of gear, and you can make your own album. And that means that there is a lot of substandard or poorly produced music coming out. But it also means that a lot of talent dribbles through that would not have been available in the old structure. I myself, I counted the other day, have put out some 26 albums, some more underground and alternative than others. I would not have been able to do that 20, 30 years ago. I would have had to have trolled the country playing gigs, trying to attract an agent or a label man to take a chance on me. That's no longer necessary. Does that mean music is all bad? No. In fact, if you go, and I used to do this for the radio show, spend 2 hours on Bandcamp. Spend 2 hours on SoundCloud or Reverb Nation or whatever your favorite new music digital platform might be, and you will find amazing music. Troll YouTube for a couple of hours. You'll find just absolutely staggering talent that's out there. It's not getting picked up. A lot of these people are paying to play. There's no system in place anymore. There's no structure in music. It's all gone. All radio is clear channel and pre-recorded, sort of designed playlists. There's no national or international consciousness. We're not all watching the same or listening to the same platforms. Everything has been splintered into myriad little alternative worlds of music. We might listen to music our whole lifetimes now and not hear the same bands, unless we somehow come over, discover a common, a platform that would introduce those bands to us. It's not like the old days. But to say that music is junk because what you hear on the radio, whatever that means these days, I mean, who listens to the radio? or whatever you hear on mainstream television commercials and things like that, those bands don't represent this day and age. You're insulting, literally thousands of musicians and bands and ensembles in all genres of music, in new genres of music, by reducing them to what you hear in mainstream circles. Music doesn't bleed out; it doesn't trickle down like it used to. You have to go looking for it. I firmly believe that every generation since the dawn of time has produced good musicians and good music. Also bad music as well. The age that we're in now is no different to any other. You will find amazing, new, dynamic, challenging music if you go look for it. So to say there's no good music anymore, music isn't what it used to be, is more a reflection of your laziness and willingness to settle, to listen to the same stuff over and over again. And furthermore, it's not true. As much as there were brilliant and inventive bands in the 60s and 70s and 80s, we had a lot of crap back then too. I mean, for every Beatles in the 60s, there was a ton of, syrupy, very non-challenging, very musically non-progressive pop music, what the Germans call Schlager. There was tons of it. There was tons of it in the 70s. There was tons of it in the 80s. I'm an 80s boy, and I think the 80s provided an unbelievable underground scene, all kinds of new genres, from punk to death rock to ska to you name it, shoegaze. It also gave us Huey Lewis and the News. It also gave us some of the most mundane and boring sugar-coated pop music as well. It's the same with every generation. It's the same with every decade. It's the same with every era. You can't assign the 60s to the Beatles and the Stones, the 70s to King Crimson, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the 80s to Bauhaus and The Cure, Sisters of Mercy, Susie and the Banshees, and then this era to the crappiest, most syrupy schlock that you can find. That's an inadequate comparison. The fact that you haven't heard anything good, or that you haven't heard anything challenging, doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means that you, A, don't have the time or inclination to seek it out, or you haven't found the platforms to find it. But it's out there. There's always good music. Trust me. I used to create playlists that are 30, 40 songs deep for my radio shows, and I could only pick 15 songs. And every month I agonized over which ones to leave out. I wanted to play them all. I found literally dozens of acts every month that I couldn't cram in to my time slot that kept me up at night, because I really wanted to advertise those musicians and those bands, but I just didn't have the time available. That's how much good music is coming out. Even in this age of digitization, even in the age of annoying auto-tune and the most inane sort of copybook pop music, go beyond that and you'll find amazing music to listen to. So my response to Rick and other people my age that continually do this is, no, you're wrong. Music today doesn't all suck, isn't all terrible. You're just not finding, or you're not taking the time to seek out music that is new, challenging, unique, diverse, brave. It's out there. It's out there, and if you go looking for it, you'll find it. And you'll listen to a lot of terrible music on the way. And by the way, this is any genre. If you're into metal, You know, a lot of metal bands are derivative now. You know, they're sort of chug, chug, chug sounds all the same chord structures. Rick Beato is right about that, about people being sort of sucked into patterns. He's absolutely right about that. But if you dig, you'll find progressive, even metal music. You'll find progressive, industrial, electronica, um, all kinds of stuff. It's out there. There are people doing it. Most of them aren't making any money. Most of them aren't selling albums. Most of them work other jobs. But there will always be good music to be had if you take the time. And you're open enough to seek it out and give it a chance. And that's my take on that whole thing. I'm interested to see what you think. Of course, the top music of the 70s and 80s, 60s, even 50s if you get into, you know, bop jazz and things like that, free jazz. Of course, that's unparalleled. But it doesn't mean there isn't music that's on a par in terms of bravery and uniqueness today. It just doesn't have the same platforms to get out into the world. Um, you know, there's not one monolithic system that will introduce it to you. You know, it's splattered all over the internet in little corners, digital corners, and you have to sort of go and spend time and seek it out. Otherwise, you'll never hear it. Doesn't mean it's not there. Okay, folks. See you on the next one.